The Hand of the Necromancer by Brad Strickland, Chapter 3. As soon as Johnny got home, he went to see Professor Childermass. At the mention of the strange man, the professor's face grew red. "Matthias Murgle of Boston," he growled, "a crackpot if there ever was one." "Do you know him?" asked Johnny. "I've never actually met him, but he has telephoned me 3 or 4 times this summer trying to buy the Black Leech collection from me. I won't sell the stuff, not because I hate to part with it, but just because I refuse to be pestered into anything. Well, John, if that unsavory character turns up again, you have my permission to tell him to pay me a visit. I will send him on his way with a flea in his ear. Now come into the kitchen and tell me what you think of a little experiment of mine. It's a double fudge mocha mousse, and I suspect it is just the thing for a warm June afternoon." The dessert was cool and gloppy and delicious, but despite Johnny's hints, Professor Childermass gave no sign of wanting to discuss the mysterious Mr. Murgle. At last, Johnny crossed the street to his own house. He watched television for a while, then he read a science fiction novel about a high school boy in the 21st century who is rocketed to a strange planet. The Earth is so crowded with people that there is no room for him and the other teenagers. At 7, Grandma called Johnny to dinner, and after the meal, he and Grandpa played a couple of games of checkers as they listened to a Red Sox-Detroit Tigers game on the radio. The Red Sox lost, as happened all too frequently, and by the time Johnny went to bed, he had almost forgotten the strange incident in the Gudge Museum. The next morning, the professor was off somewhere, and Johnny had no chores to do, so he went downtown. There were a few kids in Peter's sweet shop on Merrimack Street, but he didn't know them. He had a soda and then wandered out, feeling sorry for himself. If only Fergie were here, Johnny thought. We'd go for a long walk and talk about all sorts of crazy stuff. Strolling around Dunstan Heights alone wasn't nearly as much fun. Still, Johnny had nothing else to do. He walked aimlessly and wound up at the athletic field, where a raucous game of baseball was going on. No use trying to join in. A couple of tough kids from St. Michael's School were playing, and they didn't think much of Johnny's abilities. He noticed another lonely figure, a kid in a baggy white t-shirt, a red baseball cap, and blue jeans standing ahead of him and staring at the game. The kid leaned on a bat that had its handle thrust through the strap of a fielder's mitt. Another rotten player, Johnny decided. Feeling left out, he turned and started to plod away. "Hey kid, want to play flies and grounders?" Johnny turned around surprised. He had assumed the youngster with the bat and gloves was a boy, but the voice was a girl's. She was tall and skinny with a pug nose and a spatter of freckles across her cheeks. Sure," Johnny said hesitantly. "Come on, their highnesses won't let me play, but they can't stop us from hitting a few. Is that someplace good to practice?" "The park," Johnny said. "It's not far from here." They walked east on Merrimack Street, then cut over to Round Pond. A semicircle of small ponds lay on this side of town, and a grassy park offered lots of open space. A few people were eating picnic lunches up under the trees, but Johnny and the girl found a nice level stretch of grass. I'm not very good," Johnny confessed. "They won't let me play either." "It's okay," returned the girl with a grin. "You don't have to be Dom DiMaggio to play flies and grounders. By the way, my name's Sarah Channing." "I'm Johnny Dixon," Sarah nodded. "We just moved here," she said. "My dad's going to teach at Hagstrom College in the fall." Johnny's face brightened. "Yeah? I know a history teacher there, Professor Childermass. He lives across the street from me." "Dad teaches English," said Sarah. "Want to bat first or field first?" They played for an hour or so, and then Sarah said, "Let me see something. I'm going to pitch a few to you. Nothing tricky. Take a good cut at them." She pushed her red cap up on her forehead, went into a wind-up, and pitched a clean strike. Johnny missed it, grunted in irritation, and then trotted to receive the ball. He tossed it back, and she said, "Again." Johnny swung and missed 3 times. A humiliating strikeout. Sarah came over to him and said, "Get into your stance again." Raising the bat, Johnny crouched a bit. "Choke up on the bat a little, that's good. Now hold still," Sarah said. He felt her grab the end of the bat and move it away from his shoulder. "Now keep it right there." She nudged his feet a little farther apart. "Don't bend your knees so much. Get your chin up." She inspected him as if he were a sculpture she had been working on. "That's better. I'm going to pitch you a pretty easy one. When you swing, try really hard to keep your shoulders level. Keep your eye on the ball and don't blink when you swing. Keep your elbows pretty loose, but keep control of the bat. Ready?" "I guess so," Johnny said without much hope. "Here we go." She wound up and tossed him a beauty. Johnny squinted, swung, and connected with a solid thonk. To his surprise, the ball sprang away. in a sizzling drive. "It's a hot line drive down the third baseline," whooped Sarah. "Dixon got a piece of that one, folks. It's a base hit for Johnny Dixon, who some folks say is the next Dom DiMaggio." Johnny was blushing furiously. "You took it easy on me," he said. Sarah chased the ball down and trotted back, grinning. "Sure I did," she yelled. "But next one's going to be a little hotter. Ready, Ace?" Every once in a while, Sarah interrupted her pitching to come over and criticize Johnny's stance. He made the adjustments she recommended, and before long he was hitting one out of four, even when she was pitching fastballs and curves. "Not so bad," she said when they both got tired. "I figure you at a batting average of around .250. Betcha you could boost that with a little practice." Johnny could not help grinning. He and Fergie played all the time, but Fergie, who was a great natural athlete, was not much of a coach, and had never offered him this kind of help. Just wait, Johnny thought. Fergie's in for a surprise next time we play. He and Sarah switched places, and Sarah made quite a few nice hits. "Boy," Johnny said, loping back after having retrieved a long one, "I don't see why those guys won't let you play. You're good." "'Cause I'm a girl," Sarah returned, making a face. "And 'cause they don't know how good I am. It's rough being the new kid in town. Hey, that's enough. It's hot and I'm getting tired." "You thirsty?" Johnny asked, taking his glove off and walking over to where she leaned on the bat. "Yeah," admitted Sarah. "Parched." You want to go to Peter's sweet shop for a soda or something?" "Are you feeling sorry for me?" demanded Sarah, scowling fiercely. Johnny felt his face turn red. I didn't mean..." After a moment, Sarah smiled, a surprisingly shy smile. "That's okay. I thought you were kidding me. I'd love to have a soda, but I'll buy my own, okay?" She took her cap off and ran her fingers through her hair. It was red and cut very short. "You can tell me all about this place on the way. We just moved in. I feel like a fish out of water. Say, do you know St. Michael's School?" "Yeah," Johnny said, surprised. "I go there." "Really? I'm going there, too. Listen, are the sisters big on walloping your hands with a ruler?" "No," Johnny said. "Hardly any of them do that." "That's a relief. I was in a Catholic girls' school out in Minnesota, but those nuns had arms on them like Babe Ruth, They chatted together as they walked to the ice cream shop and discovered that they would be in the same grade. Johnny was delighted. Sarah was a little imposing as a friend. She had the air of taking charge, but she had a super sense of humor, and just like him, she had always had trouble fitting in. She had been miserable at her last school, she told him. When the other girls went gaga over singers like Eddie Fisher, she memorized baseball statistics. "Lots of other girls made fun of me," she confessed over a vanilla soda, "just because I don't like dancing and dresses and moonlit walks. And I do like baseball and cars and horses." Johnny shrugged. Whatever Sarah liked was fine with him. "I'm terrible at sports," he admitted, "but I'm good at English, Latin, and history, and pretty good at science and math. I guess I don't make friends very easily either." "Let's be friends then," said Sarah. "You need a friend because you're lonely, and I need one because I'm a stranger in a strange land. Deal?" "Deal." They locked pinkies on it, a ritual Johnny had never heard of before. For a few minutes they sipped their sodas, and Johnny said, "I've got a summer job in the museum across the street from the college." "Huh," said Sarah. "Must be boring." Thinking of the Sofa Peabody room. Johnny nodded. "Sometimes it is, but there's a witch room, and that's kind of interesting. You know about the Salem witch trials, don't you?" She did not. Johnny happily explained about them, and then told her about the witch hysteria in Dustin Heights for good measure. "Huh," she said. "I guess people were pretty stupid in the olden days." Johnny sighed, stirring the foamy dregs of his soda with his straw. He happened to know that not everyone who believed in witches and magic was stupid. In fact, he had been through some pretty harrowing adventures with the professor and Fergie, adventures that sometimes threatened to turn nasty, and that had even involved diabolical magic. But he knew that most people were like Sarah. In their opinion, anyone who thought ghosts and witches were magic, or who thought ghosts and witches and magic were real, had to have a screw loose. He almost told Sarah some of the things that had happened to him, but he thought better of it. They finished their sodas and went outside. As they sauntered along the street, Sarah asked, "So what does your dad do?" "He's a pilot in the Air Force," replied Johnny. "Wow, no kidding. That's great." "Yeah," Johnny said, "I guess. What's wrong?" Johnny made a face. "Well, I don't get to see him all that often. My mom died a few years ago." "I'm sorry," said Sarah. "Thanks. And Dad was flying a fighter plane in Korea, so I came here to live with my grandparents." Sarah stopped and gave him a sharp look. Wait a minute. Was he that guy who got shot down and then escaped back to American lines? Yeah, said Johnny. Major Harrison Dixon, but he wasn't but he was a captain then. I read about him in Life. Your dad's a hero. Boy, my dad never does anything more exciting than grade an essay. You're lucky, Dixon. I suppose. So what's wrong? They began to walk again, Johnny said. The problem is that usually I see Dad for just a few weeks every year. During Christmas vacation this year, we're going to go deep sea fishing in Florida. Great! Can I meet him when he comes? Sure. Suppose you give me his autograph? Johnny looked hard at her, but she didn't seem to be teasing him. Sure you would, he told her. But he's just Dad. I mean, he doesn't think of himself as a hero. Sarah shrugged, and for a few steps she was silent. Then she spoke up again. Going to Florida, huh? You know, the only time I have ever seen the ocean was when we flew into Boston. It sure doesn't look like much through an airplane window. Looking at a marquee ahead of them, Johnny noticed the theater was showing a Saturday matinee. It was a film he had seen before, Captain Horatio Hornblower. He asked, Hey, want to see a movie? That's a silly title, said Sarah. Who is he, Clarabelle's brother? Clarabelle Hornblower was a clown on the Howdy Doody show, a puppet show that came on TV every afternoon. It was for little kids. No, Captain Hornblower was a sea captain in the British Navy, back during the Napoleonic Wars, explained Johnny. He's sent on a mission to South America, and then he has to fight a ship that's twice the size of the Lydia. That's his ship. And there's this big battle at sea with the two ships firing cannons at each other. Sounds like fun, said Sarah, only I'm broke after the sodas. After a moment's pause, Johnny said, I got paid yesterday. I can buy your ticket. It's not a date or anything. Next time you can buy mine, okay? Sarah grinned at him. You're right, Dixon. Sure, I guess. Sounds like a pretty good movie. They went to the show and munched popcorn and guzzled orange sodas as the ship battles, sword fights, and narrow escapes worked themselves out on the screen. When they walked back outside after the movie, the sunlight seemed dazzling and strange. Half a block away, she turned. Hey, Dixon, what's your phone number? He called it out to her. How about yours? He asked. Don't have one yet. I'll call you when we get a phone. Bye. She put the bat over her shoulder and marched away. Johnny grinned. Maybe, he thought, this wasn't going to be such a terrible summer after all. He strolled back toward Fillmore Street, whistling a jaunty tune, with thoughts of the horrible Mr. Murgle, the wizard Estrius Blackleach, and the mysterious wooden hand very far from his mind. And that's the end of Chapter 3.